information, Mr. Dwyer?
I had Ron Ferrigno.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm here for, I think, 2 sign applications. The first one is, and you want me to share my screen, correct?
Yeah, hang on a sec. Go ahead.
Got it?
Yep.
So the first one is Creative Space at 229 Russell Street in Hadley. This sign is being relocated due to the Mass DOT road widening project that everybody's well aware of. We're basically moving the sign from the driveway entrance to the middle of the property, kind of directly in line with the front door, which is a good thing from a exit visibility standpoint, I think. And we're moving it just back from the new property line.
You said that was 129, Russell?
229.
Or 229?
It says 226 on the sign.
Yeah, it should be. It's the even side of the street, so it should be 226.
Okay, it's a typo in my layout. 226.
Do we know the difference between the existing setback from the curb and the proposed setback from the curb? I mean, I'm just wondering if it's moving back the same distance as the taking.
It's probably not moving back quite as much as the taking, but it was right on the sidewalk previously. You can kind of see it in the existing photo. It's far away. I'm sorry, I could bring up another photo if you want, but
No, I'm just wondering about the visibility for cars exiting your driveway.
yeah, well, it's so far away from the driveway now that it makes for much better visibility. But it's further back from the existing sidewalk, of course, but probably the same distance back from as it was from the old sidewalk. However, again, I think 50 feet away further from the driveway entrance, which makes that visibility so much better.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? This is a staying externally illuminated, correct?
It's the exact same sign. I think we have to do 2 new posts, but it's the same exact sign. And I think we're going to change the number at the top. That panel was kind of rotten, so I think he's getting a new panel, but it'll be the exact same look.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Nope. I'll make a motion to approve the change.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Ron, did you send this to me?
Nicole Handerkin did,
Okay.
but I can make sure she gets it to you again if you want.
Yeah, just so we're sure that we have the latest and greatest.
Okay. I'll send it to you tonight as soon as we hang up.
Yep. Okay.
And this is the embarrassing one a little bit. I apologize. We had a little mix up on the meeting. I think we installed this sign, or we plan to remove that. We're talking about the Hadley Farm Museum now, right next to Town Hall at 149 Russell Street. We were asked quickly to remove that sign because it was in the way of construction. We were waiting for some paperwork from the curator of the museum, and that finally came through. So we worked quickly to get there. And our plan was to remove it and leave a temporary A-frame like some other locations. And in the end, it was easier just to move it back. So they did it all on the same day. And of course, we're busted, I guess, by the people in the town hall because we didn't yet have the permit. And then to make matters worse, there was a mix-up as who was attending the meeting that night. So nobody did. I don't know. So I apologize for that. But right now that sign is in place.
So you're asking permission or asking forgiveness?
Whichever
good.
gets it done.
What's the address there?
149 Russell Street.
So you're just moving it, basically you're moving it one sign's width.
Yeah, a little more, there's probably a foot. One sign's width plus a foot.
Okay.
So it's kind of in line with the building. I could probably, if you want, I can try to find the some photos. Yeah, so here's a finished sign photo.
Yeah, that'll actually help getting out of the town hall parking lot.
Yep.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the change.
Is that both requests forgiveness and approval? I'll second it.
Well, motion and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5 unanimously. Very good, thank you.
Thank you,
That's
guys.
it.
I'll email both of these layouts.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Stop sharing.
Next up was Pat Pearsall.
Thanks. Bill, did everyone get a chance to see that document that I sent you?
It was sent around, but if you can put it up on your screen, that would be helpful, or I can try to.
I can try to do that. You might test my abilities here with Zoom.
Yeah, let me see. I have
that working?
yes.
Okay. Let's see here. I got 2 screens going. So essentially, this is a proposal to deal with the concerns around signs. We do have, as I noted in there, a bunch of kind of grandfathered signs that have been there for years. My proposal, if I want to jump down here, I did kind of give you all of the sign measurements so that we had those. But we're actually looking to take down several signs. Sign on the front of the building, which is number 1. If you would like me to, I can scroll down and show that sign. Is that preferable?
Yes. Why don't you show us? Because we're mostly all familiar with it.
So that's number 1. So we're proposing that is currently on the front of the building, and we want to remove that, as well as this sign along. Forgive me, I don't know which direction that is. But the Hadley Garden Center sign on the side and on that front peak. So we're looking to remove all of those. The 4th sign, this one is intended to be moved back due to the road widening. We're still waiting for paperwork from DOT on that. That's been months in the making, but essentially it will be improved and moved back. The Rita board portion will be taken off of that. This is a rendition, not exact, but a sign we've used in other locations. So we're proposing to remove that other one and install this one once we get that all figured out with DOT and payment and Ron. We're also proposing to leave this sign in place, if you know where that is. That's right by the light in the main entrance to the 285 property. This one remains. This sign has already been moved as part of the DOT move. Ron did that for us a little while ago. It was moving back away from the expansion. These were some signs of concern that were on the POS hut. So that is the front one. We are proposing that we could leave these two building signs on this building until we finish renovation there and remove it. I can speak to that a little bit more. But let me go through the signs first. This is the back, which I think was more of the concern of the board. And I have the measurements up above here. I don't remember exactly what they are. This sign is in front of the 287 property. We're proposing that that gets removed. It's currently in disrepair, and so we would just want to remove it. There's no need to have a sign in front of that other building. So those are kind of all of the signs we addressed in this note. And referring to, I think you'd probably want to know, how temporary is temporary. Our intention is to further expand on that site and put a new building on there. That looks to be, I would estimate now, a 24-month project. When that goes in, that hut is no longer necessary because we would put new registers in, and we would remove it and relocate it to another property at that time. Don't know if that's sufficient or if you have questions on that.
And are you going to be looking for signage for your new building?
When yeah, that would be part of the permitting, I would assume, for when the new building goes in. Yes, there would be, the intention would be there would be a building sign on there per code.
I would think that even though certain signs are grandfathered, that they would be included in the total square footage allowed. You can't, I don't believe you can get additional square footage in addition to what has been grandfathered. Can you, Bill?
Well, he's taking them down.
I think he's leaving some up.
He's leaving mostly the roadside signs are the ones that are mostly staying.
And he's arguing that those are grandfathered.
But
Well-
they're coming down, aren't they?
During the last planning meeting we had, that was, I believe, the opinion of the board that we were given, was that those were all grandfathered.
But you're proposing to have additional signage in addition to the square footage of the grandfathered signs?
Yes, total square footage is being reduced significantly.
But this is essentially reopening a site plan approval, I think, right, gentlemen?
It's,
So how many square feet of signs are you proposing to have after this is all done and settled?
I would have to, I did not calculate that in the note. I would have to
Oh.
look at that.
I think we have to include the grandfathered signs, even though they are grandfathered, as part of the total allowable.
That's a good point, that even though the roadside signs are grandfathered, he's going to keep, I think, 3 of them. And the one that used to be where the ice cream shop is, that's different property. So that sign doesn't count towards this at all. That's the one that had where they had the daycare center.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they're taking that sign down for the time being, but whatever square footage that sign was doesn't count towards the Gardner Center. Towards the what you call it, grandfathering of the other GSC property. the main property, because those are two separate properties as far as I know, I think.
Yes, they are.
So we need to know how big the three roadside signs are that currently that you're on the GSC, and you're saying you're going to keep all three and basically change them. The square footage of those three signs, new signs, cannot exceed what you have for square footage today, because the number and the square footage is grandfathered as long as they're not larger in total.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, the two that are remaining that we haven't changed in this proposal are the same. The square footage proposal, which I haven't put in front of you for that new sign, would conform with the square footage that is required, right? And it's going to be smaller than that read-aboard sign,
Well,
but I can get
I
you.
think you need to, show us the square footage of the signs you're removing and the square footage of the sign you're adding, so that we can see that it's equal to or less than what you're
Yeah.
removing.
Well, if you remove a grandfathered sign, then that's your choice. It can't be replaced necessarily, can it?
correct. Well,
Right.
if it's removed, it's removed. I mean, they can take it
Yeah.
down and put a new one in place of
You
it.
can't, we're talking apples and oranges here.
Well, okay. So are we considering the signs on the building grandfathered signs? I would assume so, because they must exceed the current square footage. For sure.
The signs on the building are indeed grandfathered, but if you remove them, you remove them.
Right.
Okay. So you can't say, well, I had this sign was this big, this sign was this big, so I'm going to add new signs in different locations equaling the same size. If you replace them with a sign, they're going to be basically the same size or less in the same locations, the way I interpret the bylaw.
Yeah, you don't get credit for the grandfathered ones that you remove.
So if he takes, if he took a pylon sign down and put a new pylon sign up, and it was less than or equal than the same square footage, would that be allowed? Versus he's taking signs off the building and adding a pylon sign. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. He's got three roadside signs that he intends to keep.
Yeah.
But he's going to basically replace them with new signs,
Oh, okay.
is the way I hear what he said.
Yeah, and that's okay. A 1-for-1 swap of grandfathered signs is fine.
Correct. He's taking more building signs down than he's putting up.
And so he wanted to use that to enlarge his pylon?
No,
I
Okay.
think, try to describe it better. We are removing building signs. What I think I'm proposing is that there's concern about the signs on the POS building. Can we consider that a building sign until that is removed and a building sign is put on a new building? Because there would be no signs on the actual building. Because the hut is the concern, at least that's what the board expressed the last time we met.
The signs on the hut exceed your allocation and are not grandfathered. So
They exceed the building allocation or just general allocation when you.
For the site.
For the site, the general rule is a 64 square foot pylon sign and 64 square feet of building signs.
Mm-hmm.
So you have well over 64 square feet of roadside or pylon signs, and whatever you are taking off of the building, the point of sale structure hut that you put up is not grandfathered.
Understood. If there are 64 square feet allowed on the building, and there's less than 64 square feet on that building, would that be permissible?
As long as the 64 square feet building, let's say you have, right now you're gonna have, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the new building. You're putting another building on the site?
That at a future date. Right now, I'm talking about the POS building that is sitting there that was the concern, that has signing on it.
The old Hadley Garden Center, right?
No, he's talking about the POS hut that he's got out front.
Oh, the hut. The
Yes,
little-
yeah,
Yeah,
let me, if I'm still, I'm not even sure if I'm still sharing here. So this guy,
okay. You could play games with a zone bylaw, but I don't think it's gonna be to your advantage. If you have multiple buildings on the site, each building is allowed one sign not to exceed 40 square feet per building, not 64. So you're going to reduce your square footage allowed if you try to play games with multiple buildings. But if that's what you would like to do, you could do that, but I'm not sure that will work to your advantage. Otherwise, you're allowed 64 square feet total for all the buildings,
I see.
and you're only allowed one sign per building. If you use the 64 square feet, you're allowed up to, I think it's 3 or 4 signs, not to exceed a total of 64 square
Of
feet.
64, yeah.
So, you know, I'm not sure which one works to your advantage.
So if I understand that, if we wanted to follow my proposal, we would have to be under 40 square feet on that building, in total.
And one sign.
Trying to remember. Okay. So it sounds like I need to get that final measurement and put a final proposal in front of you.
Yes,
Fair?
sounds correct.
Bill, did you want me to address the follow-up on the front of the store at all at this point in time, or do you have time for that?
You're working, so the problem is with the fencing and the piles of stuff in front that have replaced the parking. You're still working through with DPW and fire on that?
We had a meeting, DPW, fire, Tom was there. And I think we came to an agreement on it. Tom had a question about the fence and potential obstruction of view down the road. And I think I provided, and I'm not sure if Tom's on here. I think I provided the distance is about 70 feet from that exit, and the fence is on, it's an exit on the right-hand side, so it shouldn't obstruct any view of oncoming traffic. I think that was the only thing that was left of concern. And when we left that meeting, Tom, I believe, was going to bring that to the board, and we haven't discussed it since then.
So
But
I would suggest that Jim and I are somewhat familiar with what's going on. I don't think the other members of the board are up to speed on that. So maybe it'd be better to have you come back after you are sure you are square with fire, DPW, and the building inspector.
Okay.
And maybe have your landscape architect back in, because it all ties back into the original waiver of site plan approval.
Right.
So Jeff
Yeah,
Squires would have some input there, I would think.
Yeah, he was at the meeting as well. I think we just gotta align with Tom. DPW and fire were in agreement on the proposal I put in front of them, so I think we're close. So we can attend next meeting.
Yep, we'll be here in 2 weeks.
Okay, excellent. And I hope to have something in front of you about the signs before then, and maybe we can just wrap that up at the time.
That would be good. That would be great. Get this out of the way.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if you could stop sharing, please. Thank you. So next up was Justin Peeland. Justin, I don't know if you're just watching or did you have something to talk to us about?
Nope, I was just here to listen in.
Okay.
Steve Viano.
Alrighty, great. All right, good evening, everybody. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I came in. I was looking to request the public hearing date so we can get everything rocking and rolling for the adding non-permanent concrete bin blocks for the into the back of the property, 243 Russell Street. We were looking to put bins in to be able to hold some bulk materials to help improve my company's efficiency, and that's what we were looking to do.
Okay. You're going to apply for site plan approval, right?
Yep.
I believe you received the application form.
I didn't get an application form. That was the only thing. Actually, yeah, I did. I sent in the application form to you guys.
And he also filed with us the electronic copy of what was delivered to the town clerk. I think I sent that around to everybody.
Okay.
I think it came in just before our last meeting, and Jim, you were away shortly after that, so I'll make sure that it gets around again to everyone.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I would think we want to get this reviewed by a reviewing engineer, all of his plans, correct?
Yeah, I think there's some question about the some areas in the back, right? Aren't there some sensitive areas in the back? Some setbacks or something?
So on this property here, this property doesn't abut wetlands. However, my neighbor's property does. So we are over the boundary limits to be influenced by wetlands, but though they can still play a little bit of a part if it's foreseeable that there wasn't any type of erosion or anything like that, or if we took measures to be able to prevent that.
So you said you are within the wetlands by a little bit?
Nope, we're outside of them.
You're outside of it.
But
Is that your
it's the same-
determination of the Conservation Commission?
I did talk to the lady that's the secretary for the Conservation Commission. I asked her to look it over for me, and if she thought that it was necessary to send somebody out and meet here to be able to delineate the wetlands, and she said that she didn't need to come out here.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're not abutting the wetlands, but you're within the wetland setback. Is that right?
No, so we're outside of the setback for the wetlands as well.
Do you have something like that in writing from the Conservation Commission?
I have an email, yeah.
Okay. Could you make sure the planning board gets a copy of that email?
I can do that for you.
Great. just to make everything and count all of our, make sure we're not, make sure we're all in the same boat.
Definitely.
I think we had talked about maybe not needing peer review because it was a relatively is mostly a change of use, but
Okay,
it does, yeah, obviously it does make a difference, I think, depending on what you're storing there, since you're not storing the de-icing compound.
you're basically storing organic materials now?
Yep, the only things that would be stored there would be probably a little bit of mulch, a little bit of screamed loam, and then 3/4 stone. So just stone that's mined right out of the notch over there. We would just bring that in just so we would be able to have access to it all the time. We plan on everything being lower than the fence. We don't plan on really heaping anything. It's just more of a convenience factor for having them for us.
Okay. Assume you did, and mailing labels or envelopes?
Yep. 2 sets.
Okay. Could you just drop those off at the town hall to planning board mailbox?
I can do that.
Okay. That would be great. We could set a public hearing for November 6th, that's election day, right, Bill, November 7th?
I'm not sure, do we have, not sure that we have anything, but the clerk just sent something around.
Yeah, is this November 7th this year an election day?
I think this is an off year for
For elections?
Hang on a sec, let me see what I have from the clerk.
Okay,
Fall holidays. No, she's just mentioning Columbus Day, Veterans Day, and Thanksgiving.
okay,
It's not a town election, that's in the spring, and it's not a state election.
yeah, I think it's only the odd years that are
I think it's
election years.
US, it
I mean,
could be
even
US
number years.
election.
What's that, Mike?
I'm just looking on Google, 2023 US elections are scheduled to be held in large part on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. So we may have some national elections here.
Well, we'll
Well, it looks
tentatively
like,
schedule.
looks like it may not affect Massachusetts. Okay.
Yeah, Steve, we'll tentatively schedule you for November 7th, which is 1 month away. If we find it, we can't hold any kind of a public hearing on election day. That's why we're wondering this. So we'll do a little bit of research. If it's not an election day, we'll schedule it on the 7th. If it is an election day, we'll move it to the 21st, okay?
Great.
We'll let you know we'll mail you a note of whichever one it's gonna be once we find out,
Great. Thank you.
okay? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Dwyer. Oh, did the application, did you mail that in to, we're gonna give you an application. We'll email you an application, or did you fill something out? You're on mute, Bill. Bill, you're muted.
I sent him an application.
Okay. Did
So
you
he did
did you fill it out and mail it in?
He returned it.
You returned it, okay.
Okay, I'll make sure you get a copy of it. I think
Okay.
I sent it around, but
Okay. Once I get the legal notice price, I will then put a fee on there and email it back to you. And then you can pay
Awesome,
it
thank
to the
you.
town clerk. Okay. All right. Next up, Mr. Dwyer.
Next on my list was Tom Corbett, but I think Tom is here to talk about battery storage with, or hear the conversation if we get to it with Ken.
Okay.
I have Kyle Fennell.
I'm here with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Thank
Great.
you.
And Jesse Breckelbaum.
I'm here for the Alan Peterfroon project.
Okay.
Justin Pelland.
Justin's here to watch what we're up to.
Okay. All right.
He's from Hadley. He's on the Housing and Economic Development Committee
Okay.
that Molly chairs. Okay, so I guess it's in order to take up the administrative review of the small scale ground mount. Do you still have we went through you went through the checklist on that, and it was all covered except for the
the only outstanding item was that they had concrete anchors for the solar mount, and as they have since emailed us that they're going to be using those screw-in posts. It's like well, it is a giant screw.
I think they call them helical anchors or something like that.
Yeah, that's correct. We're going to be using helical piles, and I just sent over the corrected plan set with the engineering in it to the planning email. We had sent the engineering before, but I just wanted to give you a plan set so the engineering's all in one place,
right,
instead of a separate document. But I can share. Let's see real quick.
I can let me just forward it to everyone while I'm thinking of.
So essentially, we went over everything else in this project zoning wise. I can rehash that. We're putting in a tracker system, and before we had a concrete base. Essentially, the only difference, we went to the same engineers and we got permission to do a helical pile base. So this engineering shows it's about 88 inches. Just gets driven directly into the ground, and I believe it's only 8 inches above ground that will be above the surface. 4 to 8 inches above grade. We've done one of these installs before. It's pretty smooth. There's no concrete. But like I said, if anyone wants me to go over the zoning from the last meeting, I know it's been about a month, so I'm happy to refresh.
We're good. You were good last time. You're good. So you're still good this time.
Okay. So yeah, that's about it. Nothing else in this project has changed. We won't be putting concrete for any electrical mounting either. So I know that is allowed by zoning, but just a note, there won't be any concrete involved.
Okay.
You just scroll up to the site location again, just to refresh our minds.
14 Hockenham Road.
Yep, so we're on 14 Hockenham Road. We have quite large setbacks.
Yeah.
Everything's over 230 feet. To show you on Google Earth, this is what it looks like. This person's driveway is quite a bit longer, and so there's no visibility from the main road. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that will never be visible from the road.
Yeah, no way.
Even in winter.
Yep. Maybe in 100 years.
That's not Camilla's old house, is it? No.
No, this is across the street.
Okay,
across street down. This is that subdivision that was, oh, I call it subdivision. This is that street that was put in where a whole bunch of the houses have frontage on Hockenham, but they have a monster common driveway for like 4 or 5 houses. And there
okay,
was one flag lot,
okay.
probably, how long ago, Joe? Maybe 20 years ago?
Perhaps.
It was a while ago. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Make a motion to approve the project based on the solar specs, including, we have all the specs on the project, on the system. It is compliant with interdepartment review, other boards were notified. The decision was within, well, 90 days of receipt of a complete application to the planning authority, to the planning board, that the proposed project will constitute a suitable development and is in compliance with the standards set forth in this bylaw. Approval of the project is subject to any other conditions and modifications and restrictions which will ensure that the project meet the standards for review, subject to approval of any other boards if and as required.
I'll make that motion.
And I would offer a second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, there is no appeal period on this. Within the next couple of days, I'll get a notice out to the building inspector, although he's listening, so he knows that you actually got approval tonight. So if you wish to apply essentially tomorrow at your convenience, you may.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you too.
And that brings us to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Good evening, board. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ken?
Good. So I guess there may be a lot of things to talk about. But what I will let you know is that I shared with you this evening, the progress that we're making on the rules and regulations for the planning board that was discussed at the last meeting, to start moving towards consolidating the various documents that you have into one. And so I am working off of 3 separate files that Bill shared with me back in 2019, that were like you made an attempt in 2015 to adopt and draft a set of rules and regulations for the board. I'm presuming that that wasn't passed. And then there were some additional documents that you had for home occupations and inclusionary zoning, which I know was something that we talked about at the last meeting, because in your bylaws, you identify areas of the bylaw where the board may promulgate rules and regulations. So this first 3 sections are the particular to, particular to the powers and duties of the board, the organization of the board. So it is all mostly from that initial document. I did clarify some particulars and maybe made a little more clear some of the subheadings, but all of the first 3 sections are probably your like nuts and bolts of the planning board process, both special permits, application requirements, etc. The next sections that we'll work on will be specific to meetings and how meetings are run, in addition to how you may waive rules. And then in your document, you have limited business design review guidelines. And like I mentioned, including home occupations and inclusionary zoning. And I think, and I don't know, Jim, you might know better, when the board passed the stormwater bylaw, those are supposed to be promulgated in the planning board's rules and regs.
No, I believe I mean, I'm trying to think.
General bylaws?
It was not a bylaw.
Well, you removed it from your zoning to
We
the,
removed it from the bylaw.
yeah,
We talked about making it a general bylaw, but it got to be, I believe, wait a minute, let me look and see what we did.
I think we did adopt them as regulations. I think
we
we had,
did too.
we had a public hearing and we adopted them as planning board regulations.
Okay.
I can try to find out when we did
Yes,
that.
yes, stormwater regulations.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that was after you moved the zoning, because originally you had the stormwater in your zoning bylaw, but then
Correct.
you took the action to move it to your general. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so at the end, so what we'll do is ensure that we have the proper, I think we probably, hopefully still have that. And I may look to you, Bill, for the item where you approved the regulations for stormwater, just so that we have what you actually adopted. And then parse through the other items that you have so that we can create this document. But like I mentioned, your current document, at least the draft from 2015, was 30 pages, and I'm presuming that's going to be similar for this
How
particular
many pages?
product. 30.
Or the regulations?
Or the regulations, yeah, because you
Well, so
included.
The stormwater regulation alone is almost 33.
Then, well, we'll figure that out, Jim. Yes, you're right. There is a lot in the stormwater regulations, if I recall. Yeah.
Okay,
So
you had also worked up some standard conditions language for us, and we haven't really moved forward on that. And that would belong in the regulations too, I imagine.
yeah, and so typically they would be included there. And so when we talk about the hearing, and I can probably even, let's see, I think I still have that. Or maybe it makes sense for you to review that once we have that work product. Yes, I remember sharing those with you, and I think maybe to an extent the board has in your decisions. Do you make motions for standard conditions? I can't recall, because obviously you would have had to adopt.
So no, I have a template, and I read off 5 pages of conditions.
Okay.
Which I would rather not do.
Right.
Since my goal is to have it set up something like your insurance policy, where there is a declarations page with all the variables spelled out, and then 10 pages of standard conditions, like subject to approval of other boards if and as required, so I don't have to read that every time.
Sure. Yeah, and I think how you would cite when you're ready to make a motion and for your decision, you can, once this is adopted, you can rely on what it says in the standards, presuming those are the standards that the board wants.
Although I would then anticipate printing out everything to attach to the notice of decision. Will be 1 or 2 pages with standard conditions attached.
Right. Is your intention with the standard conditions to identify all of them would be applicable to that particular permit, or are you looking for conditions that may be applicable? And then you would identify those in your decision and then somehow show to the one that is receiving the decision that those are the standards or those are the conditions that are applicable to that decision.
I guess it'll depend on how bulky the standard conditions are. One of the drafts you sent that I started working with seemed to have a lot of stuff. And I wasn't sure how applicable it would be. And I just got bogged down and never finished editing it.
Okay.
But, certainly we can say that on the core decision, we can say standard conditions except 23, 25, and 32 or something like that.
Perfect. Okay, so I will review what I may have submitted to the board back then for that, and then maybe incorporate it into the future iteration of this when you review it. What I think I will also say is there a place on the town website where your planning board fees are? Or
I am not sure. I don't think so.
okay.
And I think the town clerk may have the fees, but we've had some difficulty keeping our page maintained. There was information there a few years ago that got lost in the translation when we went to a new website provider. And I haven't been successful in finding out who's in charge of updating it or how to update it.
Okay.
That's also an ongoing discussion at town hall about providing an enhanced and coordinated online presence. So, right now, I'm not sure we even have the expiration dates of our terms on the page.
No.
Okay, so if there's some follow-up with regards to that, and I guess as far as procedure, and I know that the applicant that was before you, just before you opened, or no, prior to your administrative approval, that you send out the applications. Is it that the planning board will send it out if asked, or can they access it? How does that correspondence where that a application is forthcoming? Is it coming through conversations with the planning board, or
Yes.
Okay.
They have to ask for it. They have to ask Jim or me for an application, because we do not have it online. It's not like it's such a big deal. We're talking about maybe 2 a month.
Sure.
So
Okay.
yeah, but
okay, so as far as procedures, I think that was it. So we'll continue working on this. It is a pretty dense document, and I think trying to figure out what the balance of what may already be stated in your bylaw and where the rules and regulations is helpful and not just a rehash of the bylaw. So trying to figure out, because it's a document for both the planning board, any new planning board members, should you have them, as well as where you would direct residents and or applicants, regarding your process. So just want to make sure that it reads in a way that if they need to go to the bylaw, that the citation is there. But if we don't need the rules and regulations to also be including the bylaw, I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So we'll continue to work on that. So I think, as we were talking at the last meeting, and a good chunk of it was regarding the 40R work. I am wondering, based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting, if, and knowing that if the board wants to explore a 40R district, it's more than likely that the board can apply for a grant. The town can apply for a grant to do that work. We are going to be starting to do that work in 2 communities next year, or at least one community next year. And they received grant funds to establish a 40R district in their town center.
That would be the technical local assistance.
Yeah, so they got through a different grant project, but I could imagine the district local technical assistance, which you've applied for in the past, for your housing production plan, as well as your previous, I think, when you worked with Larry Smith on your master plans chapters, that was done through DLTA. I presume that something similar can be done here, either through DLTA, and there's so many other types of grants that are out there, especially for housing. So knowing that, though, I think that the conversation, and I don't know, since the last meeting, there was the article in the Gazette. And if you've been hearing conversations within town regarding like pursuing exploration of the district, knowing what you may know now, but also like how interested the planning board is to move forward with this particular process. It wouldn't start, I think, until the new year, and we can work towards trying to figure out how to prepare a grant application to explore that. But I think also knowing that the intention of the grant would be to try to move it to a town meeting when you're ready, and when that work has been completed and you get some preliminary approval from Housing Livable Communities. So that is some guidance that I'm providing as far as, if the planning board may be interested in truly pursuing the 40R district, 40R districts, or, any sort of looking at those particular areas of town, and looking at grants.
And the understanding from the planning board perspective, or at least my perspective, is the fact that we were looking for a possibility of one area, i.e. Econo Lodge, as being a 40R district. But you seem to have expanded it to seem that we were looking for, as you called it, a holistic approach, that is, make the whole mall area a 40R district, and then we could carve out the Econo Lodge. I don't think that would be something that I would be interested in. We were looking.
That was the state. That wasn't
could we
Kevin.
take a small area and bring that before the town?
So I missed the meeting, but I did watch the video, and I don't think it was that dire. I think the idea was, as Mark was going to say, I think, before I stepped on his words, that the relevant state agency, not knowing anything about Hadley, looked at a map and said, "Oh, this would be a good area." It's just for discussion purposes. They're not requiring it, as I understand. What I do understand is that if we just tried to do a 40R for Econo Lodge, Boston might let us do that, but there would be no funding support for it because of the way it has evolved into a rejected friendly 40B. But if we add some additional property to it, whether it be the Mountain Farms Mall or the Hampshire Mall parcel, in addition to the Econo Lodge parcel, that it would be more attractive.
Excuse me.
I'm all for continuing to explore this, because if we let ourselves get derailed by one map, we've put a fair amount of effort into this point. Let's see if there's a way to get something that we can all be comfortable with
Like,
and keep
what
the
do we
train
want?
moving.
I mean, you're alluding to some grant money. What will the grant money do for us?
I think it would allow us to do is do some in-depth studies either into the land use. I think we're all familiar because I travel down Route 9 often, and I can probably pick out the parcels that were identified on that map also. But it would probably create some sort of scenarios, do some scenario planning, identifying land uses, looking at your possible densities in that area or elsewhere. But it would allow the town and the planning board to formalize an application to the state for a 40R district, and probably in that parallel like pathway, working with the state to ensure, as we did with the housing production plan, that it conformed to what their expectations are for those particular districts, and whatever was similar to what was in the housing production plan. So it would be for that. It would be, some additional funding to do some engagement around it too. I think what's also important is, if there's an exploration of a district, a new district, or areas of town where you may have this type of development, working with residents and possible, the abutters, and creating some education component out of the using the funding.
Hadley enjoys a AAA bond rating due to the efforts of our town treasurer, the select board, and the finance committee. So it's always nice to get money, but that's not our primary goal, I don't think. I think our primary goal is to do what's best for the town of Hadley. And
Okay,
to
so-
come in to spend some money just to get a report and all these scenarios, it's kind of feel good stuff. You know what I mean?
But what I'm worried about, for example, under the master plan, no one ever points out the main master plan #1 priority for the town of Hadley is to maintain the agricultural land in the open space. People will say, well, it's in your master plan. It may be number 10 or 11 that we should do this, we should do that. And so they refer to our master plan, never to the #1 priority, but the 10th or 11th. And I'm afraid that if we do form a study, people will take it and run with it and say, oh, that's what the planning board wants. And I don't even think we should pursue it. I mean, we should be aware, and we should make ourselves aware. And then the state can overrule us like they are doing now in the town of Yarmouth. So they declare emergency and do what they want to do.
Well, first of all, I think there are a couple of funding or grant term is being used a couple of ways. One is what Ken is talking about, which is a grant to basically pay him to do some research. And the other grant is the grant that the state will pay a community that successfully adopts a 40R district. I don't care about that at this point. I'm not counting on it one way or the other. But if we can get a product, you can explore the area, Ken will produce or PVPC will produce a product that gives us something to really consider. Right now, we're talking a lot about feelings and whether we think it's right or not. Let's get some of this data. If it doesn't cost the town anything to go out and get the information, I say, let's get it. And then we can decide what to do with it.
Well,
I don't,
it's
I
a
don't-
slippery slope. Once we get involved, it,
I don't think there's any
we're gonna
commitment.
be pushed on it.
no, there's no commitment here. If
Well,
we don't like the result, we're going to tell Ken, thanks, but no thanks. And we don't file an application with Boston.
Well, Ken, are you gonna prepare this report?
I mean, depending on the grant, we can. As I mentioned,
Have you prepared any yet? 40R yards? Yeah, right?
PVPC has, yes. We've done 40R applications on behalf of some communities. And we will be doing that in the new year for another community. But I think what I'll say to Bill's point is with regards to a grant that could fund doing a study and doing some engagement around looking at a 40R district or the components of that, which also includes community education. We could do that through district local technical assistance. As I mentioned, that was what helped fund the housing production plan that was recently approved last year. And then, or another entity can do the same thing, depending on if there's another grant and the planning board or the town wish to go through a review process for another entity to do a 40R application. So.
I mean, what basically, the way I see it is that, let's say a portion of a mall, one of the larger boxes there, I won't mention any names, decides to close up, and people will say, well, that's a wonderful place for apartments. We ought to zone the whole area for apartments. But the town of Hadley is not interested in doing something like that. That's our business zone. Do we want to make it more? We've got our percentage of 12% of apartments and affordable housing. And people say we need more.
Yeah, and 11 years ago or so, a study was done on, quote unquote, a study was done on Russell School, basically saying the building was falling down. Something had to be done. The last town meeting, the town meeting voted to have another study done. So on Russell School. So
If I may request the talking stick now that we've heard the naysayers, I feel that there is nothing to lose and only things to gain in asking for information, especially if we can get it paid for by the state or some other grant. There's no commitment and it could give you, Joe, Mike, it could give you the data you want to support your argument. But it's not a commitment. It's doing our job as planning boards to not stick our heads in the sand, but say we're looking at our town and we're looking at what our resources are and what our options are. And if it says, boy, this is prime for development, we say, okay, good to know. We're not interested in that today. Then there's no harm, no foul.
I would submit that apart from the 5 of us here, talking just about planning board members, you can probably count on 1 or at most 2 hands everybody else in Hadley who has any kind of a working knowledge of what 40R is. And it's something, yes, we need to stay on top of it. We have an expertise that the rest of the community doesn't have. Whether we decide to recommend it or recommend against it after we get the information gathered is for another day. But moving ahead and learning something is valuable, I think.
Well, we didn't know any, certainly had never heard the term 40R until about 4 or 5 months ago, until the Econo Lodge people showed up before us. So, I mean, we're allowing to this, I think we've learned quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months. And I'm not sure I'm liking what I'm hearing. And that's all I'll say.
Okay. I would be interested in a study. But the area to study would be a question that I would like to, at the time, investigate more. Is it the entire town? Is it one end of Route 9 to the other? Is it just the area that was highlighted a couple of meetings ago? I don't know, because I don't think we know. That would be my opinion, the goal of the study, to find out where is the most appropriate place to do something like this. To Joe's point, I'm not sure it is in this area. That's prime business zone. Maybe someplace further west on Route 9 might be better. That would be a good outcome of a study. What are maybe appropriate areas, not just one, that could be looked at for future investigations?
Yeah, I could imagine.
Bottom line is, I think a study would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's, and even if we didn't use it for this, it might be, it would be informative for something else to see. I would imagine, Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it would look at infrastructure. Where is there sewer? Where is there water? Where is there, 3-phase or 2-phase, single phase power? Where is there access to PVTA? Obviously things like, where is it going to impact the wetlands or aquifer recharge? These are all of the things that we kind of know in different parts of our brain could all be put down in an organized fashion, and it could very easily, Mike or Joe, become our arsenal to argue against certain sites in the future. So I think it's information that we can use to your end or to any other end.
Yes, one particular point, and we did the housing study, and it was a very comprehensive study, and we certainly realized that development follows sewers. Now, if we're going to put apartments somewhere, our sewer capacity is where we are at capacity in our sewer plant. In fact, now that's a simple problem that we have to resolve before we even start saying, well, this would be a good place because there's a sewer line in front of it. But how about the other end of the sewer line that we don't have capacity? So does it mean we expand the sewer line? Is that what you're going to study? Or are you just going to study the location where you want to put it?
Yeah, I would assume that sewer capacity, water capacity, et cetera, would be part of the study, because you can't say put it here without knowing the ramifications.
Okay, that would be something that I would lean to, as opposed to a area that is potentially capable of handling.
I don't think Ken is so half-baked to give us a study to say you could put it here and find out, oh, no, you can't. I mean, Ken and the PVPC are pretty, from what they have done, they've mentioned that these, in prior studies, these are possibilities, but these are watchouts, or these are gotchas. So you got to be careful. They're not going to give us go here only to find out, holy moly's, we're in deep doo-doo because you can't put it there. You're gonna spend $10,000 to put it here on land, but then you're gonna spend $1 million to upgrade all these other things. I think Ken is much better than that, and so PVPC.
Well, given my respect for the chair of this committee, if you make a motion, I'll support it, Jim. Let's move forward. I mean, to paraphrase Yogi Berra, you don't know what you got until you got it, okay?
Ken, can you give us an outline of basically what a study could entail?
Sure.
Okay. That would be helpful. That way, at least we have a more firm talking spot. I mean, I think, you know where we're coming from.
For sure. I mean, I've worked with the board for 3 years, and I definitely have seen what you've been working on and how you've been working, how you've been putting forth your approvals, and how they're written and how they are suggested. And, I think the board has done a great job of utilizing both the master plan and other town documents to understand what its role is. And I think, to Mark's point, it is, if I could be an advocate for something, it's the planning board are the planners, right? The article says the planners from Hadley, you all are all planners. So understanding that, I think, because of what the town has, the zoning board of appeals had decided with regards to that parcel that would have been for housing, you're looking at an opportunity, and you're looking at to see where possibly additional housing can go, because that wasn't provided in approval. Your housing production plan does, identify some implementation strategies with regards to examining parcels along Route 9 for rezoning commercial space for multifamily housing and mixed uses. So, that is something with regards to in 40R that you would be exploring as well. So yeah, I look forward to providing the planning board a scope of work on what a study could look like, and then go from that point. Like I said, the grants are really not open till the new year, so it is like a long-term conversation, but I'm sure that all of you are interacting with your neighbors and others about how, this is important to the town, or may not be as important to the town. But I'll leave it at that.
Could I ask one more question of Ken, and just a hypothetical? Because I can imagine us being asked this on the streets of Laredo or Hadley. If we started with a grant in January, what do you think is the soonest we could have a 40R to bring to town? Would that be by fall 24 or spring 25?
It could be. I think we would be, if it is the district local technical assistance, which is a January to December grant, which was the housing production plan. Yeah, presumably it would, we could front load that work already, knowing what it is that the planning board may be wanting to look at, and knowing how to move forward and pretty quickly. My colleague Kyle on the call here would be assisting me, as probably some other additional PVPC staff. But presumably, it could possibly be done by fall, but the planning board may want to take some additional time and maybe make it a
yeah. I don't think that's going to happen, because that would be, if we were all aligned, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion and investigation and reinvestigation. So, I mean, just to allay fears, it's probably not before 2025.
That's typically also the conditions of the grant with regards to if you, are exploring this. The suggestion through district local technical assistance is that there's going to be some movement in trying to move it forward in some way. So, understanding that, more than likely you'd be looking at spring 25 when you're looking at maybe bringing something to town again.
What do you think of all this, Kyle? Come on, earn your salary. Come on.
I think you're all raising valid points. I think it's always better to move forward with as much data as possible. I value in any of these processes a chance to talk to community members to spread awareness. To my understanding, I'm also curious about the implications of a large 40R district, just broadly, and my understanding of the process. I'm curious if and how that type of development has to be phased. I think there's some flexibility there. But again, I'm still learning a lot about the program. But yeah, I think it would be a year-long process to do the feasibility study and to get all the information gathered. But it is a very exciting opportunity. I think for Hadley to move forward with it would demonstrate the role that you all play as citizen planners and really lifting up some interesting tools that the Commonwealth have provided municipalities. So I'm excited to do the work if that's what you choose to request of us. And yeah, I'm excited to learn alongside with you all.
Well spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
You know, I was thinking about that great cult movie from the 50s, The Blob, starring Steve McQueen. And, you know, we got a blob to the east and there's no way to stop it. And so we really, I think in the long run, have to define what Hadley's relationship is going to be with that blob. And we really got to do some longer term planning in that vein rather than reacting. That's all.
Well, the state is telling us what direction they want us to go. When they can form an opinion that no longer does zoning have to have a 2/3, which is critical, because if the town wants to change, you need a 2/3 vote. They're saying, oh, you only need a simple majority. So they already are putting their stamp of approval on 40R over the town.
When I said east, I meant Amherst, UMass, not Boston.
And Joe,
that's
I
the
don't think
blob.
they're going. I don't think they're going over the town. The town still needs to vote a simple majority.
Sure, but
once
the
again,
radiation, the radiation affects us. You know, even it affects us, even though we got.
Okay, one other.
Limits.
Just follow what is happening in the town of Yarmouth, where a motel was filled with some illegals that came in, and the town has no say-so in what the state is doing. So, I mean, this is something that they're subtly telling us what direction they want us to go.
I heard that was happening with the Econo Lodge through the grapevine. Is that true?
Well, I don't even want to go there. That's why I'm nervous.
So I believe that Tom Corbett joined us tonight because
good point, Bill.
He's interested in the battery-only solar storage.
How about those Red Sox?
Jesus.
While we have you, perhaps we could just take up where we stand with battery storage. And I know you were working with Jim about it, and I don't know where we're going with this.
I've got a question for you, Tom. The Kincomi and PVPC have prepared a draft solar, or a not a solar, call it a energy bylaw, battery storage bylaw, and it's a broad brush approach that covers the basics for almost anybody in Massachusetts, and each town would need to massage it to fit their needs. One of the questions I have is the all the trailers that house the batteries are sitting on a concrete pad. Is that correct?
That is a typical design. Yeah. Sometimes they'll have like just footings.
Okay.
Space.
Can that concrete pad be a floating pad in that it has no footings under it?
I would think so, but I'd have to look at spec sheets.
Okay, well, you know what I'm saying by a floating pad? In other words, let's say 3 or 4 inches of concrete, poured concrete that just sit on top of the ground that would float, if you would, with frost heaves and everything else, up and down, whatever it might be with frost.
That's typically how we go about them, but that I
Oh, it
can't
is?
speak for everybody. Yeah, that's typically how we go about our bigger pads.
How
If
much do
they're
they
doing-
weigh?
If they're doing smaller pads, they probably don't have a footing.
Okay,
But then again, these containers are 65,000 pounds, so I'd imagine that there'd have to be some. I'd have to check on that, really.
okay.
Some heft in there.
Where are you going with that, Jim?
Well, what I'm thinking is we don't want any permanent concrete deep into the ground so that if they abandon this thing 20 years down the road, like if it's a solar panel, they just pull the screws out of the ground, pull the wires out, which is relatively not too difficult, that are buried, and be gone. But if it's a concrete footing that's say 3 or 4 feet into the ground, that's a whole lot to excavate out. Whereas a concrete pad sitting on top of the pad, they come in, jackhammer it into pieces, throw it into a trailer, recycle it, and it's relatively clean, and not extremely expensive to dispose of it. So that's kind of where I was going from. That I wanted to avoid footings under these trailers or storage for the battery storage of themselves. So
Has the state given any direction as to batteries and the requirements of communities to install them?
the only
It-
thing the state
I'm
has
asking Tom
given,
that.
oh,
Sorry.
So the state, it's forthcoming from the state as far as guidance for towns. But most of all, it was back in 2015. No, 2018, chapter 227 of the Acts of 2018 Act. Governor Baker established a 1,000 megawatt energy storage target to be achieved by December 31st, 2025. The act also requires DOER to set targets for electric companies to procure energy dispatched from battery energy storage. So meaning the state is setting a goal of 1,000 megawatts. Also, while the DOER is requiring electric companies like Eversource to get energy from these resources, which is what the Clean Peak Energy Standard is in the state. And that's really just to advance the clean energy. And there's been multiple MLU decisions as of this year stating all this really and not allowing towns to outright prohibit energy storage, like in Wendell, and then in Spencer, they get into more detail, and that was back in May, about the ESS qualifying as a solar energy system, which in a way it qualifies through your bylaw, regardless of the town council's opinion through this, that it's allowed. So really, it's the hope that Hadley would move forward to just protect themselves with creating the regulation and just being ahead of the game before the state comes in and tells everybody that they have to do it. Really.
They would never do that.
So I wonder if
Are you
it,
trying to scare us, Tom?
Not at all. No, not at all. I just think it's right for towns to protect themselves. That's why I try and work with towns pretty intimately on bylaws. Almost every town I've been in, I've worked with towns on bylaws because they don't have the regulations in place and they didn't see it at the time to be fit in their solar bylaw. So some towns early on, I was able to fit in their solar bylaw because that was of their opinion, which has come to be true through the Attorney General's office. And they already had these kind of safety standards set forth for their solar bylaw. So we used those and replicated those for the energy storage and made that project conform to those requirements.
Does Newton or Wellesley or Cambridge have a battery storage bylaw? Just curious.
I don't think so.
I didn't think so.
Batteries, yeah, battery storage in high population areas like the cities and stuff is getting
Mm-hmm.
kind of complicated just with space.
Yeah, those are pretty much bedroom communities.
Yeah.
Hadley's a bedroom community or turning into one.
So I wonder if another solution to this might be to ask for another opinion of current town council. So the KP Law gave us the opinion that battery only storage did not fit within our definition of solar.
The only concern I have with that is if they say it's allowed, we have nothing saying how to put batteries in.
That's a good point, Jim.
That's what we're working on. We're not, you know, now that Tom has answered the question that I have about the concrete pads, I would say that our bylaw will be easily ready for annual town meeting now.
So Bill, is the most recent town council opinion the one that applies?
We have a town council opinion from our prior town council. And unless we ask somebody else, that is the opinion we go with.
So if the current town council gives us an opinion that is opposed to that opinion, then the current town council's opinion is the one that applies.
That's more of a question for Bill, isn't it?
Yeah, I would be inclined to follow the guidance of current town council, if only because the situation has evolved over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
and again, my only concern with that is if they say it's a permitted use.
Right, I agree with you.
The way the
Let's not
solar
open the door.
bylaw is written, it is very difficult to apply it to battery storage because it's not that geared that way. That's why I'd like to get a true energy storage in place so that we could apply it appropriately for each situation.
Okay, good point.
I would make the comparison to let's not open the front door until we have the screen in place.
Now, we haven't addressed in the last couple of meetings, the zoning required. Would it be in a particular industrial zone, business zone, all zones, residential zone, agri-residential area?
I could give some 2 cents on that. Just in general, I see communities allowing it where they allow solar, for main reason being that you're already allowing the use technically within that zone. Now, that's not to say that you can't put like a size restriction on a project in a certain zone, say a 5 megawatt cap, so that you don't have anything larger, taking up more space, visual aspects of that as well. And those bigger projects won't be suitable on smaller parcels anyway, because your setback requirements and such. So typically I see most towns like Lancaster, Oxford, some other towns I've worked with, that they allow it where they allow solar, solely because they allow batteries plus solar in the solar zones.
As the battery gets larger, is it more efficient?
As the battery gets larger, is it more efficient? The technology changes through the years, and the types of battery systems change the efficiency. So early on, we had like air-cooled systems. Those air-cooled systems are very inefficient, and now they're liquid-cooled systems, which are like a 3% increase in efficiency for just the cooling. Never mind the rest of it.
So you seem to be tying the permission of solar fields to solar batteries, but the batteries do not just take energy from wind or solar panels. It is all forms of energy that is stored from the grid, correct?
Exactly.
It technically, yes, when you look at it as a basic concept, and what you're looking at is you're taking power off the grid here, you don't know where that power is coming from.
Okay.
But through policy.
Wait, let him answer the question.
Yeah, so through policy is where all these MLU decisions come into your chapter 40A section 3 land protections for certain uses that are for the good of the community, that can't be unreasonably restricted, such as solar, which includes battery storage through chapter 40A section 3. So there's a lot to it, really. So there, you get the energy from the grid there, but we are also restricted through the Clean Peak Energy Standard of when we can charge, and those charging windows are when solar charge is on. And then we are further restricted from the national grid end, and they tell us how much we can charge, what percentage we can charge based upon what that particular feeder through National Grid or EverSource is actually producing. So I could say that since looking at our project that we had proposed, 5 megawatts is the max that we'd be able to fit on anything in Hadley by the looks of it, right now.
Now, do you have a particular setback that you normally recommend from sidelines, Tom?
I've seen 50, I've seen 25 in industrial districts. 50 is pretty typical. I haven't seen much more for energy storage particularly. I'm just trying to think of all the projects that I've permitted so far, and I don't think I've had anything over a 50-foot buffer, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
I'd have to look back. I think I've sent you most of the bylaws from the other towns at some point in time.
Yeah, I was just wondering what you recommended or you like.
Yeah, I mean 50 feet is reasonable. It protects you with a buffer from the zone, from the sideline. So if you need to do plantings, things of that nature, sound requirements come into play as well too. So that does have a little bit of effect on where that system actually has to sit.
What do you mean sound?
So not going above 10 decibel change through section 310, maybe chapter 7. So there's a restriction on how much is allowable in a decibel change for a project in Massachusetts. So if we come in and our lowest ambient noise in the neighborhood is 35, we have to go by 35 as our 10 number. So we can't go above 45 sound attenuation wise from the source.
So these batteries make a sound?
There's a buzzing.
There's a little bit of a noise from the inverters and such like that, like you'd hear on a solar field. You don't really get, we analyze our systems at 100% max rating, which these systems are not even allowed to run at 50% most of the time through EverSource and National Grid. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but we always do the highest level that it could possibly create, which is, it changes system to system realistically. So I don't want to speak too much to decibels, but.
So that's 10 decibels over, how does that work, over?
Yeah, so it and I could send you a typical sound report if you wanted to look at that. So the state regulates it as you have to go in and you have to take a sound monitor and you have to record. It's pretty much live for anywhere from 3 to 7 days. Sometimes they do daily monitoring. So that collects all your noise levels throughout the day: traffic, noise, school buses, backup alarms, crickets, all that stuff. A lot of your bugs and birds, they'll take out of that equation, so that's not taken in, it's a pure tone. So you're looking for your ambient levels, and that really brings it down to what a quiet neighborhood really is on an attenuation scale, is around 35-40 decibels. So it's typically, the project wouldn't be able to go above that 45 or 50 decibel level without mitigation measures. And there are abilities to mitigate sound very well. Sometimes you'll see around substations like a 10-12 foot concrete wall with like H-beams in the ground, and they slide in between. Those are typical for sound mitigation on some projects, but again, it's not for every project, but some systems could be noisier than others. So it's just something to keep in mind.
50 dBA is pretty quiet.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Okay.
Except
You
for
find,
us.
you find neighborhood with 35 dBA?
So, and I should mention that that's recorded at the property line.
I don't care. 35 dBA is beyond quiet.
Yeah, yeah. For my system that we're using, the highest decibel is, I think it's 80 on a fan, which attenuation wise at like 100 feet or 50 feet is virtually not existent, really.
Well,
50.
Fans are easy to attenuate relatively.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So if there's a little vibration, it'd probably be a good place to hunt for night crawlers.
Yeah, right. Right before hitting the fishing hole down in the Connecticut.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, there. Well, that's great information. If you could get me that information on the sound and the state spec, like what section it is of the state stuff, so we could incorporate that. That would be great.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Okay. Other questions on energy storage, if any? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ken. That's a big help to get this thing moving forward now.
For sure. Anytime.
Just 1 second. Tom, could you take pictures of some of the installations that you've already got in place and maybe send them to us?
I have pictures of some sites that are solar plus battery. Nothing standalone has moved through National Grid or Eversource to a point of ordering equipment yet.
Okay.
So 2.5 years we've been working with these guys on this stuff.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Want
thank
to
you.
have
Just for
Ken
everyone-
set a time for Ken to return?
Oh, yeah. Would you like November 7th or 21st, Ken?
The 7th works better.
7th. Okay.
So yeah, we'll update the rules and regs, and I'll prepare a scope for the planning board to look at.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Town meeting articles, town warrant for special town meeting on October 26th. We will have a public hearing on 3 zone changes at our next planning board meeting. One is to change the review period from 35 days to 21 for the small scale solar, as with the one we just approved today. The other 2 are to increase sizes of signs for basically in the ag residential district for home occupations, etc., from 2 square feet to 4 square feet. Pretty basic and simple ones, nothing complicated.
And that would be on the 17th?
We'll have a public hearing on the 17th.
Yes, yeah, public hearing on the 17th, town meeting on the 26th.
Special town meeting on the 26th, okay. 9 days later.
Ooh. Well, we did approve, okay, we did pay the legal bill for the thing, for the public hearing on the 28th, so that's all set. Oh, wait a minute. Invoice for the zone articles. Let me get that up here on screen. Oh, yeah. I will entertain a motion to pay the Daily Hampshire Gazette $486.62 for the legal notices in the Gazette for the zone amendments.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Motion and second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
We don't want to impact our AAA rating.
no. It's pretty good, better than the United States
It's
government.
the building commissioner's salary that throws that out of whack. Very good.
I'll tell you, the town treasurer nailed it when she floated some bonds about 2 years ago at 2%, and people actually bought them.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Mr. Dwyer?
Just to let you know that as of November 1st, Kayla Lubrell, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who is providing the staff support to the Conservation Commission, will be expanding her hours to provide staff support to the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Community Preservation Act Committee, as well as the Conservation Committee.
What are our plans for her?
So in the short run, what I'll be happy to be sort of the direct point of contact, but I will what I had started when we previously had Kayla's predecessor, I had asked them asked her to start updating the minutes from the time Mark Dunn joined the board. When we get from there through current, then we can go back and start filling in the holes.
Perfect. That will keep her busy for at least a day.
Yes.
I'm a good starting point.
So as you heard when we had Steve Viano there, she does a more active role for the Conservation Commission. She actually goes out and does site visits for them because that's usually with a member of the commission, because that's something they have to do. But other than that, I don't think in the short run there'll be a lot of change. She's not going to be taking calls for us. She's not going to be scheduling for us or anything like that. But she will be there to provide that level of support. Jim, maybe she'll be able to mail out notices of meetings for you, and certainly notices of decisions for me. And we can explore a few things to.
I would think that just getting her on minutes for the time being, that'll take some time to get caught up with that. Once that gets up to corrections, then I think we can look at other duties.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually a great learning experience to get a sense of what we do and what we're looking for, that hopefully right now she has some sense of the development process, but she's not really very well versed in what we are doing versus what the Conservation Commission is doing. So we'll see how this works out.
Great. That's wonderful news.
And I think, honestly, I'll have to be the one who works with her, because she's going to be looking at my handwriting.
Yeah, I fully agree with that one. So, and she's got most of the meetings are still on tape of one type or another. So if there's other questions, you can always look at some of those. Or she finds one like, wow, this looks like an interesting one. Okay. Great. Anything else? Anything, Mr. Quinlan? Ms. Didi? You're muted. There you
Oh,
go.
sorry, no, I think we covered everything in our meeting earlier today.
Okay.
How
And,
was your,
and there-
How was your Alaska trip? When did you guys get back? A
In
while back.
August.
Yeah, all right.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion,
All
meeting is
opposed?
history. Thank you. Thank you,
Mark, I
Pete.
brought you
Thank you,
some
Kyle.
Columbia
Thank you,
chocolate.